Hi there, and thank you for clicking on the video. This video is going to be talking about Citrine and her effect on supporting role. I feel a little more qualified to talk about her now that a level cap has been done with her. And probably the biggest hot take that I'm going to have from this is I think Citrine is probably a better support than Wisp for level cap content. Even though Wisp does have really high utility items or really high utility abilities like Breach Surge, which has the ability to blind Eczemas and gives a decent damage multiplier, right? Or effective DPS increase. The fact is that Citrine also gives an effective DPS increase, especially since we're in the age of galvanized mods being on builds. The fact is that Citrine can pretty easily, the more that I think about it, give a higher damage multiplier to especially poor quality builds on your allies and your teammates. Citrine is probably a better all rounder in terms of running longer missions than Wisp. So I'm going to make the case for it. Let me know what you think. So let's go over her abilities real quick, and I'm going to give my interpretation on how effective they are at higher level content. And this is going to be like level 1,000 plus. Obviously, you can go damage to train, and I won't be talking about that because I haven't gone a level cap build with that yet. But it's pretty easy to see what her build would be if you're trying to do like a nuke. But the fact is okay. So let's go over support stuff. Fractured Blast uh, provides in a cone with a range, impact and slash procs, and when enemies die, effectively coats the floor with enough strength and health and energy orbs. So this interacts with her three, which is Prismatic Gem, provides modded status chance, status duration to statuses that you deal. Also deals a bit of damage. At lower levels, this can completely clear a tile. Decent bit of range. More importantly, as long as you are standing in the circle, the enemy does not have to be. Actually, let's put it back here. The crystal will hit. So its effective range is actually pretty fucking massive. Okay. So with pretty light work, with pretty light work, let me get at the abilities. You can apply with a 3 and a 1, you can apply puncture slash, heat, cold, electricity, toxin. With Archon continuity, you can get corrosive onto the enemy, and with a Panzer, you can get free viral. Just by Citrine being in the same room, you're essentially going to have 8 gun condition overload procs just by her existing in the room, right? So that's effectively a damage increase. Corrosive is going to be your weaker, like, stacked status, but it does count as some armor strip. Heat applies this armor strip. Viral is boosted damage from the Panzer, which is pretty meta for longer runs. But she will definitely be proccing that. So this does count as a DPS increase. Now, the direct comparison to Wisp, right? You have Breach Surge procs. Which would you rather have? Right? This is what it comes down to, the trade-off. Would you rather have Breach Surge, or would you rather have 8 status procs on all the enemies? And since they buffed this ability, it was kind of bad when she came out. It wasn't like horrible, but it was kind of bad. Now that this can apply statuses so quickly to so many enemies at once, you can readily get at least one of each proc on everything. and 1 proc of corrosive. Viral is going to be coming from the Panzer. And I've been testing this with, like when I did the level cap run, I did it with a gas path assist, bringing the AoE total to 9. So would you rather have the breach surge multiplier, which is obviously fantastic, or would you rather have 9, maybe, or 8, maybe 9 statuses if you're running a proper support build, and have the floor coated in energy and health orbs? Now, reason why I think this pulls ahead is because Wisp has a ton of utility in her moats, don't get me wrong. Health regen, movement speed, fire rate, attack speed, and obviously the shock moats. The trade-off is Wisp can't give you energy. So if you have a very, very, very energy hungry build and there's a Citrine on the team and you're running Equilibrium, essentially your energy issues are solved, especially if you're running the synth set on the Panzer. And this is one of the things where I think Citrine does really show her benefit. The next thing is though Citrine doesn't give you a health bonus, she does give you a massive EHP bonus. She has the aura, the 90% damage reduction. You get up to 25 HP per second, which isn't anything to sneeze at. Obviously, it's not as good as the health bonus from the health moat and the health regen. But the fact is this, unless you were on a incredibly tanky frame to begin with, if you had to choose, you would rather have the damage reduction. Honestly, unless it's like, say, like my Neja, for example, where it's running around with like 5,000 armor, where the health would pull ahead. But it's because I have the armor on already. Most of the time, you literally just need 1-shot protection so you can get your shield gate back up. And a little bit of EHP because most frames aren't running out tanks anyway. So this gives you 1-shot protection, way more EHP than Wisp moats. Now, obviously, the negative, it's as much as you care about, right? But the green moats, the attack speed, movement speed, fire rate moats, are of value. Let's not get it twisted. Are of extreme value. But the fact is that in the current meta, if you will, you really just need the 1-shot protection if your shield gate fails. And it shouldn't be failing because there's so much energy on the ground if Citrine's doing her job and harassing the hell out of everything with her 1, right? The other thing that I think Citrine actually ends up coming out ahead on is, though she lacks the AoE blind because of the breach surge sparks, she does have her 3, which will lock up all of the enemies that aren't Eximus. But to compensate, the AoE is rather large. This wouldn't beat out a decently ranged Wisp that casts her breach surge and teleports to a moat. The AoE on that can be pretty substantial depending on your build, and even with like 145 range, it's still pretty substantial. But the fact is this provides an impact proc, right? And to compensate, you get these crystals. Now, there is a bit of a nuance with this, right? It's not all... Oh, hold on. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. But we have Eximus. Pop this on here. The crystals still apply to the Eximus, right? You don't get body shot multipliers on this, like the head, right? So for weapons that innately deal a ton of crit chance, the dynamic for this is that if the weapon has a shit ton of crit chance already, or can hit something higher than a 300% crit, this could either be a very weak bonus, or it could potentially be a nerf. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but the list of weapons that can hit solid reds, like a lot of the Incarnon weapons can be in this category. Some of the higher crit chance weapons, like secondaries and whatnot. Anything that's like a primary or a secondary. Shotguns are a little limited in this, and would be basically exclusively an issue of somebody having a Riven that does something like that in a special circumstance, right? Because of the mods. So for 90% of the weapons, this is going to be a buff. The only exception would be for the niche group of players that are like the headshot only group of people. This could potentially interfere with your damage if the crystal goes on the head, right? Let's see if we can get one. It is a bit of RNG, so on the shoulders. Arm. Yeah, it's not super common, but this can interfere with your headshots, because especially if you're trying to shoot around it, right? Now, for higher crit chance weapons, it would potentially be a negative, right? Talking in circles here. But for most other weapons, if you've got a status weapon, because of the red shards associated with the primary where it's status chance, this would bring additional value to those weapons, especially if you're a Citrine player and you're running status chance reds for your primary. This ends up being a straight up buff. And if you're a Citrine player, you obviously know this, right? So the issue is which one comes out ahead. It's kind of hard, and I think it comes down to play style ultimately and how much you trust your team. In a team environment where it's 4 people that know each other, I think Citrine comes out clearly ahead. Right? Because the only thing that's really, the two things where Wisp really pulls ahead is the Breach Surge and the CC on Eximus and the attack speed. Citrine doesn't have those. But Citrine brings one-shot protection, additional EHP tank, and this frame, because of the bonus, makes Citrine Chroma an insanely strong combo. Because one gives damage and armor, the other one gives crit chance and damage reduction. So just between those two, after doing the level cap, it was pretty clear that when me and the Chroma were next to each other, even at, say, like, level 2500, I was readily able to face tank. Especially because the Chroma was running around with the Nidus Spectre. If you understand the multiplicative bonus to a Parasitic Link, obviously that's a ton of armor, right? On a strength Chroma to begin with. But the combination of these two basically makes them best friends. Now, obviously it's unfair to compare 2 frames versus 1, but the fact is a lot of people like playing Chroma, but there's no real solid place for Chroma in the meta. But if you were to add these two together, you could easily go to like 2, 3, 4,000 face tanking just between these two. Because Chroma has the insane EHP, Citrine amps it, adds in a pretty solid health per second. I mean, like 25 health per second isn't an insane amount. Like, obviously Wisp gives a higher amount. But the fact is with Chroma's EHP, you are recovering 25 health per second, multiplied by the damage resistance. And Citrine would be getting that too. Like, when we were doing the longer run, the disruption run, it wasn't until we were well into the thousands that we even felt the health drain. Right? Like, so this is like a huge amount of EHP between 2 frames. So, okay, so going back to the comparison. Whether you prefer Wisp or you prefer Citrine, the fact is that these two are clearly the S-class supports. And to me, personally, this wasn't really clear with how good Citrine exactly was until I got to experience her at higher levels. I've done Wisp a couple of times at level cap, like I'm comfortable with her. But Citrine, I'm probably going to add her into the rotation also. Especially since you don't need something like a Terrify. Or not like a Terrify or like Armor Strip. Because you can use a Naru on the demo list, like the strip. So, for those of you that haven't messed around with Citrine and you like running support, or you're maybe a Wisp player, the best I could probably say is that if you're a Wisp player and you really, really like Wisp, Citrine might be a good break from the normal every now and then. Like really, like a really solid break from the normal. If you, especially for like defense missions, because Citrine loves being posted up in a single spot. And her ability to lock down a corridor uh, during like disruption runs and lock up a Demolist because she has so many forms of CC. Granted, it's one form of hard CC, a pretty good impact proc. It feels pretty beefy. And the additional slow, like you're going to be able to get several stacks of cold on her pretty easy. So obviously that benefits your weapons, right? Especially if you're doing a frostbite build, you don't need to run cold because it'll be on Citrine. This is probably the other S-class support in the game, and it became really fucking clear doing the run. So, just to go over a little bit of what she needs, I could see, I'm going to still experiment with some other stuff. But, super solid support. I was really, really impressed. I normally don't make a video like this. Archon continuity has definite uses here because Prismatic Gem applies Toxin in rotation. So you're going to get plenty of corrosive procs. Energy Flow is just sort of a comfort pick. You're going to be putting Prime Flow here anyway, and you're going to have plenty of capacity left over. If the Prismatic Gem RNG kills something, it can get you the occasional extra energy orb. Not really a game breaker. If you don't want to put this on and you want to stay with Prime Flow, you know, that's perfectly fine. But since I had the capacity, I put it on there. Archon Stretch is going to be active basically the entire time that you have your 3 up. So you'll be able to regen this. Let's see, it's 2 energy per second. 53 seconds for duration. You almost refund the entire 3. Right? Because it'd be 53 seconds, so you double it. So it'd be 106 energy over 53 seconds. The ability costs 116 to cast. So, provided you cast this, cast your 1, and then kill a couple enemies, you're back to a positive. And her shield gate setup, using her 3, is honestly not that hard to do. Brief Respite, obviously. And 3 Augur mods is all I needed to comfortably cast her 1 to get shield gate, and it provides a little bit of CC. The heat causes panic on enemies. It gives you time to focus down an Eximus. And the cold slows down the Eximus a little bit. Well, not really slows them down, but you can apply 4 cold procs so you can get more crit damage. And the additional stacks will help your galvanized damage mod on whatever weapon you're using. Will give it a much chunkier base damage to burn down those Eximus units faster, which is part of the reason where I think Citrine also comes ahead, is that one of the things you need if you're trying to burn down an Eximus and you're having trouble with that, is you need base damage, crit, and you're not really hyper concerned about dots too much. Obviously, they help. But if you're used to seeing a viral hunter munitions build with faction mod damage on it, and you're used to seeing those dots, well, your dots are getting absolutely destroyed. So base damage and potentially a gas electric setup do really well against Overguard, because the Overguard doesn't care about what damage type it is. It takes the same amount of damage from everything. And gas electric deal damage instantly, and they deal damage in a dot also. So for something like that, it allows you to deal with Overguard very effectively. But obviously, if you're going against Grenier, you obviously wouldn't build like that. Obviously, that setup would be more effective against the Infested. But because of the additional chunk that you have from your galvanized damage mods and all the extra statuses that Citrine's going to put on something, it makes burning down those eczemas really nice. And Wisp kind of doesn't help you with that too much. You got the Breach Surge benefit, but it only counts as one proc unless it gets hit, right? So it is what it is. This is food for thought. Just make sure to get over. Um, I would feel comfortable saying like 150%. The reason to go higher strength is for higher status chance. It's modded. And on one, her one, I would feel comfortable saying 200%. So if you're running something like this, you could do 140% strength and run multi augmented, and maintain your 100% health orb drop and run an equilibrium with like a synth set on the Panzer, and end up with a crap ton of damage and a crap ton of health orbs because everything is going to be dropping health orbs, and that would allow you uh, to not run blind rage, right? Because you just would have to get to 160, or you could run like a transient fortitude, um, at like 50% strength, or if you're feeling lucky, you could just do a straight up energy conversion and be at like 210 with a energy orb proc, right? Because this guy gives you 50. So it's up to you. That would give you the 100%, but obviously, because like the difference between a 100% drop and like a 90% drop wouldn't be that drastic if you're hitting a ton of enemies, accuracy by volume sort of thing. You could even go a little bit lower if you wanted to run like a overextended build. Just make sure you don't tank it down to like below 100, and it should be fine, especially with not having the efficiency hit from blind rage. But either way, try this frame out if you're a Wisp player. This was an incredibly enjoyable level cap experience. Okay, so I'm giving it the 5 stars or the 10 stars, depending on whichever game you play. This is probably the other uh, S tier support. Um, and as sad as this is to say, I would probably put Citrine above Harrow in terms of a support, even though Harrow has his iframes. Obviously, Citrine isn't going to outdo Harrow in like an Eidolon setup or something like that if you're still running that. Even though the entire thing is like nuke the Eidolon with volts, right? But if you're still running Harrow, and Eidolons keep doing that. But the fact is in terms of like a late game support, the the extra damage, all of the armor, all of the elements, and all of the statuses, and all of the innate armor shred makes opening up the variety of builds you could potentially do actually really pleasurable, because you could potentially run in like a survival setup or a cascade setup. You could run like a corrosive build against the Grenier because you would have the additional statuses. You would start from like a heat armor strip and maybe 4 or 5 corrosive stacks and 10 stacks of viral from the Panzer, which makes running a corrosive build and not priming super nice. But for that sort of thing, you would have to run way more range than what I'm running. So, food for thought. This is just sort of a PSA. I'm pretty sure Citrine is a stronger support than Wisp. I'll keep running level caps with them until I finally come to like a hard conclusion, but I think their roles are different. The one shot protection and the additional EHP, especially in conjunction with the chroma, was utterly insane. So, food for thought. At a minimum, this might be a variety pick to keep things interesting for a Wisp player, but this was a super solid frame. All right, PSA over. If you listen, thank you. I appreciate you. Have a blessed day, guys.